Today, I'm joined by a special guest to go through what's going on with Israel, what's going on with Iran, what's going on in Washington, D.C. Amanda Head, thank you for coming on again.
Stephen, thank you so much for having me back.
Absolutely. Just let me give my audience some background. Amanda hosts the Furthmore with Amanda Head podcast. She's also a co-host of Just the News, No Noise on Real America's Voice with John Solomon and a White House correspondent. Tell me about the White House correspondent. What has been the energy in Washington, D.C. with the White House, with everything going on with Israel and Iran in this last week?
Yeah, it's interesting. It depends on the week, of course, because President Trump is the energy bringer. So, on days like today and tomorrow, when he is at The Hague in the Netherlands and he's not here, when he was at G7 or G8 rather, he brings the energy when he's in Washington, D.C. So when he's not here, oftentimes there aren't as many press briefings when he's not here because the press secretary is busy putting out things digitally. She sends out fact sheets for people in the media that people can use for reporting. So it depends on President Trump where he is geographically. But when he is here and when there are press briefings, boy, I mean, it is like rapid fire. And yesterday was no exception. I ran out of the office to go get lunch just very, very quickly down the street. And that's when the news broke of the bombings. And I'm like, oh my gosh, crap, they're hitting Qatar. And so I run back with my little protein bowl and I run back to the office and we're, feverishly reporting on that. And then the ceasefire happens in the A block of my own TV show. And then today it's relatively quiet. So it's a little bit of an emotional and energetic roller coaster because some days you come into work and you're like, it's going to be an easy breezy Friday. Things are cool. We're in the summer. Congress is on recess. And then bam, it's like crazy news cycle. But it's fun. And honestly, to be in the White House, to be a White House correspondent during this administration, it's a dream, and not just because I support the agenda of this president, but also because Donald Trump is an enigma. Even if there is someone who follows him, JD Vance or whoever, who is MAGA and America first, there's never going to be another Donald Trump. So I consider it an absolute blessing and an honor to be here in this city doing what I do during this administration. It's exhausting at times, but every time I'm tired, I just think to myself, you know what, there is a very limited amount of time that this is going to be my reality. So I'm just going to seize it while I can.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing this morning. I was like, I've never met Trump, but I've done 1,500 videos, and it's been an honor of a lifetime to be able to cover what's going on with our country and with this president and with Biden, and now all the corruption coming out of the Biden stuff.
You need to come to Washington, and we'll make sure that you get one of those day press passes.
Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. I've never been. I've only been to one political event in my entire life. And
with thousands of shows, I can see how you're a little busy doing this.
Yes. Yeah. So I was telling my assistant and my wife just how fast the news moves. So it was like, okay, are we going to war? No. Okay, wait a minute. We just bombed, but there wasn't a shot fired. This was like a Mission Impossible like mission. Everything went really well. And then all of a sudden there's a peace agreement. And then I wake up to Donald Trump this morning saying, I'm so mad at Israel and Iran. They don't know what the F they're doing. It's like you could literally start preparing a news show, and within an hour it's outdated. It's just, it's absolutely nuts.
Well, that's what happened to us last night. We were on air. Our show airs from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. And shortly after 6 p.m. Eastern is when President Trump truthed about the ceasefire. So we carried on through the whole first segment of the show with a member of Congress based in the reality prior to the ceasefire, that we were still dealing with these hits, these missile attacks, unfruitful, thank God, on Qatar. But, we went through, a 13-minute segment thinking that was the reality, not even knowing that. And then, of course, that changes the scope of the entire show. Thankfully, in the next block, we had someone who is a national security expert, so we were able to pivot with her. But you're right. I mean, you can have an entire show planned, and then on a dime, everything changes. It's a whole new conversation with all new implications.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I love what you guys do at Just the News. I guess I'm not surprised, but You guys, you and John, you have so much credibility that a lot of members of the leadership teams actually break stories with you guys, and you guys are digging in and breaking stories. And I believe that just like me, you guys are doing your absolute best to give good information and the truth. President Trump does not like the fake news media. Let me pull up him going off on CNN and others, actually making life worse when it comes to the war and America, simply because of the lies that they're spewing. Let's watch this together and then we'll react.
And the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean. Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers.
I mean, he calls it like he sees it. This is supposedly the guy that doesn't like members of the military, called them suckers and losers. I've never seen somebody love the military more, speak more highly of the military. Now he's saying CNN's a bunch of scumbags that need to apologize to our military. What are your thoughts on him saying, you guys keep giving bad information, you're making us look bad?
Yeah, the fact that they refuse to recognize that these 3 nuclear sites were rubblized, I think just reflects their desire to constantly demean and diminish every accomplishment by this president. Even if it's something that, especially when it's something that their side is split on. And frankly, we are in a sad state of affairs where the Democrat Party is split on whether Iran should have nuclear weapons and whether we should be supporting Israel, which, I mean, who would have thought that would have been the case 10 years ago? But they just want to diminish everything that he does. And, for our news network, for Just the News, John Solomon comes from really, really incredible and pure journalistic pedigree. He came from the Associated Press and Washington Times, and The Hill, and he has always he's always just, it's called Just the News. He looks for the who, the what, the when, and the where. It is AP reporting style. It's very fact-based and a lot of investigative reporting. And you mentioned earlier the relationships that we have with leaders on different committees in Congress. Last year, we worked very closely with three different chairmen. We worked with James Comer on oversight, Jason Smith on Ways and Means because of Hunter Biden's tax issues, and then also Jim Jordan on judiciary. And we were working with those three, and it was a coordinated relationship because John especially has looked into the Bidens for a very, very long time. He's known about these entangled relationships, with Devon Archer, and that extends to CEFC and relationships in Romania and Ukraine and Kazakhstan, and of course China. Everybody knows about that one. So we oftentimes were kind of sharing reporting with them, because what would happen is that these members of Congress, these chairmen, particularly Jamie Comer, would get these huge stacks of documents. I mean, you know how lawyers do during discovery. If you ask for something or if you file something for a FOIA, they'll give you the documents, but they'll give you like 1,000 other pages, so you have to sift through it. So because John has been so intimately involved with that reporting, and because he and I have talked about it on air and reported on it for so long, it made it a little bit easier for us to kind of offer a roadmap for those members of Congress so that they could focus their investigations where it counts and not on, frivolous B plots and C plots and D plots. So that's why we have those relationships with them. And as a result, they trust us because we have given them good information. And so therefore, a lot of times if there's a news outlet that they want to break something to, it comes to us.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, you've got AOC and Jasmine Crockett. They're now complaining that Trump didn't give them the inside information about the Iran bombing. And
no leaks. Imagine that.
Yeah, and they wonder about that. Let me pull up. Trump must have got up early before heading to the Netherlands because he says, "Stupid AOC, one of the dumbest people in Congress, is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that the crooked and corrupt Democrats have already done that twice before. The reason for her ranting is all of the victories that the USA has had under the Trump administration. The Democrats aren't used to winning, and she can't stand the concept of our country being successful again." We'll come back to the rest of that. Your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously, AOC, I don't believe she could have been trusted with this information, but my understanding is she has brought more bills to the floor that have gone nowhere than any other member of Congress. Your thoughts on him coming out and just openly blasting her? Are you tired of living paycheck to paycheck, wishing you had an extra income stream? Perhaps you've always wanted to own a home-based business, but didn't know where to start or have a blueprint for how to make money. I've recently partnered with a group that shows people exactly how to make money from home. Think about the people in your life that have lots of money. It either took a long time to get there, they inherited it, or they own a business. Most wealth in America comes from business ownership. I want to invite you to a free training tomorrow to learn about building a home-based business through following a proven strategy. Their blueprint will show you exactly what to do and how to make money. A few hours a day could bring you a nice income to help take pressure off your monthly finances, or like many in the group, it could become your full-time gig, making more than you make right now. I love bringing my community the news, but also introducing you to opportunities that could help you make more money. Follow the link below to register for the free training. This home-based business isn't complicated. It's connected to a multi-billion-dollar industry with over 20 million regular buyers. Tomorrow is going to be a great event. Follow that link down below.
Yeah, look, I mean, you want to talk about bills that failed? As of an hour ago, her impeachment proceedings failed on the floor 344 to 79. If you isolate Democrats, it was 128 to 79. 128 Democrats voted down her bill to impeach Donald Trump. And Jasmine Crockett was in a hearing today where I think that she has very, very bloated political aspirations, and she was looking for some type of committee position that she wasn't able, and she backed out of it. She backed out of the race because I think she got 6 votes out of what she would have needed, which was something around 62. So you've got these two women who their delusion of self-import is untouchable. I don't know how you have that level of self-importance. And for AOC, I could actually possibly understand it for her. She's been in Congress a while. The Democrat Party has propped her up as when she first came into Congress, it was all about how she was the youngest member of Congress. And then after that, it was all about, what she was doing for the state of New York, which actually ended up hurting her district when you talk about the Amazon facilities that she forced to move out of the district. But, she has a long line of progressive policies, and they are hand in hand with Bernie Sanders. I mean, we've all talked about this past summer, or earlier this year, what did they call it? The Fighting Tyranny Tour, where they were going around the country talking about, doing rah-rah rallies about fighting tyranny. And yet they were snapped in first class on planes, flying to these locations. And it's a sad state of affairs for the Democrat Party, because you have these two women who, I guess they're the freshest ones for the party. I mean, practically all of the other women in the party have been around too long, and they aren't fresh. And I'm not necessarily even talking about age. I'm just saying, their freshness culturally and politically. So you've got these two women who, my gosh, can you imagine if it was an AOC Jasmine Crockett ticket? Good grief. But the fact that you had everybody, so many people in the Democrat Party voting down AOC's resolution to impeach Trump, and practically no one supporting Jasmine Crockett for any type of committee leadership. Their own parties don't even believe in them. Their own parties aren't even buying what they are selling. So at this point, what do Democrats have? What can they sell? Because they've already tried the division thing. And as they have, I hope, learned after so many election cycles, the division thing doesn't work. But they keep trying the same things, and it's the definition of insanity because they're expecting different results and they're not going to get them.
Yeah. At the same time, though, there's still a lot of worry about Republicans losing the midterm.
Yeah, that's fair.
To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think if they would focus on the Doge stuff, focus on ending the Russia-Ukraine war. They've just now finished the Israel-Iran situation. The border's looking really good. Like, all they have to do is carry out Trump's agenda, which 80 million people voted for, and then brag about it, and then just point out the stupidity of the Democrat Party, and just ask one question. What did they do to make your life better? There's not really an answer. Like, they're not the party of kindness anymore. They're not the party that protects women and children. They're not the party of the worker. They're not the party of unions.
No.
I don't know what they are anymore. And yet there is still worry because historically, the party that's in power loses enough seats, and the second half of a presidency ends up being difficult. What any worries that you have about that?
Yeah, I mean, first I would say that Democrats, I think, are the party of Leah Thomas and Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Those seem to be the archetypes for their champions. For Republicans, I have consistently said that conservatives are the worst marketers of a great product, and Democrats are great marketers of a really crappy product. When it comes to President Trump's tax cuts, you look at each bracket, whether it's, under 50,000 to 100,000. I mean, Republicans could do so much better on the messaging, talking about the percentage that people's tax bills were reduced. That is a direct impact, a direct result of not only President Trump, but also Republicans. So you look at the tax cuts being permanent, that would be an accomplishment. The one big beautiful bill would be an accomplishment because it's a record number, a record amount of funding for border enforcement. And we saw going into the election that the open border was one of the it was number one or number two next to the economy for people who showed up to vote. So these are the things that Republicans have to message on better because, Democrats really don't have anything to run on other than opposing Donald Trump. And here's the thing, I don't think enough people talk about this. Donald Trump has done something that no other Republican has ever done. He has co-opted Democrat policies and put them under the Trump brand. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, ending wars, bringing troops home. These are not Republican policies. These are former, these are classical liberal type policies. But what Trump did was he looked at the Democrat Party platform and he went boom, 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 boom. Those are the things that are good. Those are the things that I think can help this economy. And I'm going to rebrand them under Trump. Trump is a master marketer. Republicans on Capitol Hill are not. But if they can somehow find a way to acquire those skills and sell the successes that they have had, minor as they may be, but if they pass this one big beautiful bill, then that will be a pretty big one. Then I think that they can keep the majority. But I hate to say it, but Republicans have consistently proven that they can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, amen. I completely agree with you. I saw a meme that was, Trump keeps breaking the Democrat Party apart. Like, dang it, I just barely got my Palestine flag. Now I've got to get a Mexico flag. Dang it, I just got my Mexico flag. Now I've got to support Iran because whatever he supports, they immediately have to take the opposite position. And you're right. He just took their best talking points and used them. And then they're like, oh no, we are definitely not for that, or that. And then they end up selling people on Trump by trying to badmouth the very good things that they had left. I wanted to pull up my channel here and show you something. So, you have like Rasmussen and Pews and others. They go out, someone gives them $500,000, $1 million. They'll call 1,000 to 1,500 Americans and ask them, do you still support Trump? New data suggests some Trump voters are frustrated over Israel and Iran. Look at this. 720,000 people voted on my channel that they still support Trump.
Yeah.
Should President Trump and the U.S. get involved in Israel's war against Iran? 73% said no. Almost 750,000 people. Should Trump have used the military? Yes. Everybody wanted Los Angeles to be safe. So my point was showing that is like the data is there on what Republicans should be doing. Like they could literally go to the top YouTubers and say, hey, will you run a poll on these specific things? And that will tell us what our talking points should be. And it would save them millions of dollars. But what do I know? I'm just a guy on YouTube.
Yeah, but they have too many friends who work in the polling industry, and they want to be able to throw some campaign dollars their way. I think that anecdotally, and I get it, this is just anecdotal, but I don't think that you will find a single Trump supporter out there who knows another Trump supporter, who knows another Trump supporter, anyone. I mean, you could go 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, 7 concentric circles beyond your circle of Trump supporter friends. And I just can't imagine you're going to find someone who is experiencing buyer's remorse with Donald Trump. And you consistently see these polls where, or even posts from the Krasensteins on X who are like, oh, I bet Trump, I'm seeing a lot of Trump supporters regretting their vote. Not a single one. Not a single one. Now, the Israel-Iran thing, I think, is a bit of an anomaly, but you've got a lot of people who are walking back what they were saying. There are a lot of big influencers out there who were criticizing President Trump, and I was one of those people who was saying, I believed what J.D. Vance said on X last week, which was Donald Trump has earned our trust. Look at what he did during his first administration, and give him the benefit of the doubt. So I did. I don't want to send troops overseas. I don't want to have another war. I don't want to be involved in this, let's face it, centuries old situation between Israel and Iran. But I know that when it comes to peace and it comes to no new wars, the best way to not have no new wars and to have peace is to denuclearize Iran. And this was the ripe time. This was the best time where their air defenses were absolutely shattered thanks to Israel. And this was the time to actually go in and do it. And you look at, and for what and just to rewind a little bit to what you were saying earlier about Democrats, and their treatment of the military versus President Trump. This was a grueling mission. I spoke to Victoria Coates yesterday on my podcast. She's former Deputy National Security Advisor for President Trump. And she talked about these B-2 pilots and what they go through. 36 hours round trip. They have absolutely no communications whatsoever. They can't talk. It's just hand signals and light signals to each other. So, I mean, and not to get into the trashy part of it, but like, how do you pee? Like, people, I don't know if people really even think about that. They think of Top Gun Maverick and the heroic parts of this mission and the glory at the end. And they don't think about all of these things along the way that make these B-2 pilots absolute heroes. And President Trump values that. The American people value that. And so I think when we saw this ceasefire, and look, ceasefires are very tenuous. It's that kind of situation, especially when you have, a 6 or a 12-hour span before it actually takes effect. It's always going to be kind of wonky and wobbly getting to the place where the ceasefire actually, is solidified. But once that happened, I think there were a lot of influencers out there who realized that, shoot, maybe I should have trusted this, because they were very, very critical of President Trump. And, there are things that I think President Trump deserves criticism on. This was not one of them.
Yeah. I watched a military video as well as like one of those AI generated explanation videos. It showed like everything they had to accomplish. And I told my wife last night while shopping, I was like, this has got to be a movie one day.
Yeah.
This has got to be a movie. Like they faked me out. They faked you out. They faked the news out. They faked Iran out, Israel. Nobody knew this was coming. And meanwhile, in stealth mode, they just quietly let the mission go. Even Trump was out, like, you don't know what I'm going to do in 2 weeks. Nobody knows what I'm going to do. I'm unpredictable, like He just
Well,
did
and the
so
only way they
great.
would have known, I heard someone mention this earlier, the only way they would have known is if they had looked at the moon phase calendar, because it was a waning crescent, which is the perfect level of darkness for these stealth B2s to make it through the sky undetected. And what's interesting about it being a waning crescent moon is that, you've seen the flag of Islam with the crescent moon on it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Okay.
maybe they should have paid a little bit more attention to their crescent moon.
Oh my gosh. Ooh, I like that. You just connected some dots for me. That was really cool. I mean, when Trump was bashing CNN, he said something like, they didn't even have the light of the moon to help them. I didn't consider
Yeah.
the fact that might actually be a really good thing. Oh, I love when dots get connected.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of connecting the dots, one of my worries is, like you said, there are things that Trump is worthy of criticism of. He's not a king. He doesn't believe he's a king. He's not a perfect person. He doesn't believe he's a perfect person. But one thing he does believe is he feels like if they're going to do what they were voted to do, that they have to get this imperfect, big, beautiful bill through. It's not perfect. Yeah. I'm sure there's stupid pork in there, but he realizes that if we don't pass this for the medical stuff, if we don't pass it for the border security, if we don't pass this for keeping those tax rates from ballooning and making taxes very expensive for middle-class America, that they were definitely going to lose the midterm elections. Your thoughts on them getting this big, beautiful bill passed? Because as it says right here, no one goes on vacation until it's done. He's saying, I'm working 7 days a week. Congress, the criticism on you guys is you don't do anything. Prove it to the American people, pass this bill.
And I'm just sitting here going, please sign it before July 4th, because as a journalist, I have to be here too. So please, guys, do your job and get it done. Yes, look, the OB3, as we've been calling it, is far from perfect. Way too many expenditures in there, far too little cutting of ridiculous expenditures. But, they don't call it horse trading for no reason. It's not perfect. However, let me tell you one thing in there that the American people would have felt before the midterms, and it absolutely would have made Republicans lose, and that is the permanency of the tax cuts. Because we're not talking about, a couple $100 here or there that would have been added to the average American's tax bill. For the average American household, it would have been in the thousands, not hundreds, thousands. And when people get that tax bill, people know what they pay in taxes from year to year. If you get a refund, you know how much you're supposed to get. If you have to pay the government, you better believe you know how much you're going to have to cut a check for. So people know what that number is. So if they, between now and then, had to feel the impacts of those tax cuts going away, that is how Republicans, that would have been route number one. On Apple Maps where it has like the darkest route highlighted because it's the fastest one. That's the darkest route, the fastest route to losing in midterms.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It would have been the final blow. Hey, because here's what I honestly believe. Kamala Harris and Biden ran on, we will raise your taxes and that the government is worthy of your trust. And Trump is like, that's the stupidest messaging I've ever heard. We're going to raise your taxes. But they would have let those lapse. Everyone would have seen from a $5,000 to $11,000 increase on their taxes.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to hire 80,000 IRS agents to ensure that you paid that. And they bought them guns. They were going to arm IRS agents. Yeah. Like, talk about like a new homeland, tax collection, armed tax collector. Like, that's what would have happened if Kamala Harris had won. I don't think most people think about that. Trump is literally saving you thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And if you don't know what Stephen is talking about, I think it was Senator Joni Ernst who put out a report about the arsenal that the IRS presently has. This is even before they had hired even more agents. And it's pretty incredible. It's pretty unbelievable to think about. You think biblically about tax collectors and how hated they were in the Bible. And then you put guns in the hands of tax collectors today. And I kind of get it. But if these had not been made permanent, if these do not get made permanent, you're right. Not only are people going to feel it, but if that had happened with respect to the IRS agents, and it's not just the added IRS agents. Remember, was it a $600 or $700 limit on Venmo where you would have to pay taxes on that? Think of all the gig economy people and look, I know nobody has any sympathy for California, but the gig economy is huge there. And so that's the type of thing that whether you're in California or anywhere else in the country, I mean, I pay into, family phone plans through Venmo. This is not something that I'm trying to hide from the federal government and try to make a business off of $700 worth of revenue, and conceal it from the government and not pay Uncle Sam. It was absolutely ridiculous. But honestly, Stephen, it is so emblematic of how Democrats feel. And it's not just on taxes, it's on the environment, it's on immigration, it's on gas stoves, it's on what you do with your bodies, whether you inject it with vaccines. They want to regulate everything. And look, I live in Washington, D.C. now, but I lived in California, and both of these places are not great when it comes to personal freedom. But that, unfortunately, we were talking about what can the Democrats run on? That's what the Democrats run on, controlling your life and not giving you any decisions. And frankly, there are far too many, especially young Democrats, young progressives, who are perfectly fine with the government making those decisions because they agree with it. They don't see the other side of the coin, that when someone else is in charge, they're going to get to make those decisions too. And then you're going to be, you're going to be on the receiving end of something that you don't like, but they don't yet have the wisdom to see that. So for now, with Democrats running on, we're going to control your life, we're going to make decisions for you, then, I don't think that that's a message that sells.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Well, we'll see how it all goes. My father-in-law used to say, if you're not a little liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a little conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain.
Yep.
And so, but they're playing to these people that want the government to control their life, and they're more than happy to tax you. It is interesting though that they're like, hey, we can't get rid of USAID. That's billions of dollars, but then they're willing to take it out of your Venmo account.
Money laundering. USAID was a money laundering organization for Democrat causes. And the more and more Doge dug into it, that is what they found. It's why Democrats were vehemently trying to knock on the doors and get them to stop, because they knew that the gig was up. But while we're talking about quotes from famous people, one of my favorite quotes about government is from Mark Twain, because he compares politicians to diapers and says that they are filled with the same thing and should be changed as frequently.
Yes. Yeah, they should. They absolutely should. Amanda, this has been a fun conversation covering a lot of really big stories. If people want to follow you online, where can I point them?
Sure. You can find me across all of social media at Amanda Head, and the podcast also has its own X page at Furthmore Pod. And then furthermorepod.com. It's a one-stop shop for, episodes and articles and all of those things.
Okay. I'll put those direct links so it's easy for my viewers to find you. Thank you so much. We'll have you on again. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Looking forward to it, and you have a great day too. Thanks, Stephen.